The Duval Rundown is brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Same-day injury care, no ER lines. Now here's your host, Gus Logue.
Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 41 of Duval Rundown. My name is Gus Logue. Today I'm joined by Frank Frangie to talk about players that Jaguars fans should be continuing to watch through the next month of the season, even if they are eliminated from the playoffs. But before we get to that, we're going to start with Jaguars trivia. This is the fourth straight season with at least 7 sacks for Josh Hines-Allen. Who's the only other player in franchise history to accomplish this feat? Is it Tony Brackens, John Henderson, Calais Campbell, or Yannick Ngakoue? Give a couple seconds. It is Yannick Ngakoue is the only other Jaguar to have 4 straight seasons of at least 7 sacks. Josh Hines-Allen just accomplished this with a strip sack on Sunday against Will Levis's Titans. So, yeah. This is a pre-recorded video with Frank, but if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to add them, and I'll get to them after the video. But here's my talk with Frank. Here we go. To our interview sit down with Frank Frangie, who co-hosts the Frangie Show from 4 to 6 p.m. each weekday on 1010XL. He's also the voice of the Jaguars and has been doing play-by-play commentary since 2014. Today, Frank and I are going to talk about a couple of different players for the Jaguars that we're interested in watching through the rest of the season, because even if Trevor Lawrence is done for the year and the team is mathematically eliminated from the postseason, they still have 4 games left. And so it's definitely obviously important for the players. And so we'll be choosing a couple of names that we'll be keeping our eye on most closely. Before we get to that, I did want to keep it kind of half glass full type of show, but I did want to ask you first, before we get to that, if you can remember a time or a season that's been more underwhelming than this one, just with all the expectations coming in.
I hear you, Gus. Glad to be on. Thanks for having me on the program. Let me say this. It's the most surprised I've been by how the season turned out. I think Doug Peterson would tell you that. I think the players would tell you that. A lot of times a team hasn't been good or a team hasn't been good, but you weren't all that surprised. They may be a little better, a little worse than you expected. I thought this was a 10 or 11 win team or more. I liked the roster. I loved the preseason. They were so confident in camp. It was a physical camp. It was a good preseason. And then the season of just, I'm very surprised how it went. Now, look, they've lost 10 games. 7 of those games, as I know you know, Gus, have been by 5 points or less. And the deciding play, either the winning play or the winning non-play, happened in the last minute 17 of the game. So it's been but that's the NFL. The NFL has games like that. So I'm surprised. It's the most surprised I've been at how a season turned out, certainly in my 11 years of calling the games. And really, guys, in the 30 years of following the team, I'm surprised it turned out this way, and I know they are too.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it, especially, like you said, the players and the coaches themselves are certainly surprised as well. I think they went 3-0 in the preseason. And I think the general expectation, even outside of Jacksonville, is that they would improve from last season or from the past 2 seasons being 9-8 and actually go further into the playoffs. And so, again, we still do have a month left of NFL football, including here in Jacksonville. As you said, there's a number of one-score games, kind of coin flip games, starting with the Week 1 game where Travis Etienne had that red zone fumble. Was obviously a kind of big play that changed the outcourse of not just the game, but it seems the season. And so if they won last week, they could win 4 in a row and end up like right back in that kind of 9-8 range. But we're definitely more focused on the players at this point than the team. And so, Frank, what's the number one player that you're looking forward to watching most in the next 4 games?
And obviously, I'm going to take the chalk here, right? I mean, I'd like to be more mysterious or suspenseful, but I think number 7 may be the best player on the team, Gus. I think Brian Thomas Jr. might be their best player. He certainly is among their best players. He last week's game, man, he wasn't involved. 3 targets, no catches. They hadn't scored. All of a sudden, they started forcing it to him, whether it was there or not, right? And next thing you know, he's got 8 catches, and they win the game. So I can give a lot of guys on that list, but if you want guy number 1, I think he's a special player. I really did. We saw last night how the Bengals were determined to get the ball to Jamar Chase. It didn't matter, right? It didn't matter what happened. Put 8 guys on it. They were going to throw the ball to number 1. I think you'll see more of that here. So it's hard for anybody to, I know I'm taking the chalk here, but it'd be hard for anybody to trump Brian Thomas Jr. for me. I can't wait to watch him these next 4 games and honestly the next however many years. I think he's a really good player.
Yeah, that's the most exciting thing, right? Is that obviously it will be exciting to watch him through these next 4 games, but really for the next 4+ years will be really exciting, especially when Trevor Lawrence does return. Because before Lawrence went down, I would say that pretty easily the offense went as Trevor went, but now at this point, definitely the offense goes as Brian Thomas Jr. goes. Mac Jones did call him the best player on the team after Sunday's win. He didn't really come out and say it blatantly like that, but when he was describing his scramble drill on the left side to get to Brian Thomas, which set them up for the go-ahead touchdown, he just described it as Jacksonville's best player making a good play. And I think that no one would argue against that. And it's also interesting to watch Brian Thomas over the next month, but really particularly next week, because he's only 14 yards away from breaking Justin Blackmon's rookie receiving yards record. And so, yeah, he's going to be in the franchise rookie record books and should be in a bunch of different record books going forward. And so definitely agree with you. Number 7 is number 1 on this list. I'll go second, and I think that number 41 is a pretty clear number 2, because even if Josh Hines-Allen is a more established player and you kind of understand what you're going to get out of him, he's also chasing history of his own. He's, I believe, 3.5 sacks behind Tony Bracken's career sacks record in Jacksonville. And so, I mean, at the very latest, Hines-Allen will break the record like at the beginning of next season. But I think it is interesting to continue watching him this season after his record-breaking year last year to see if he can have another record-breaking year this year.
All right, am I next up? Do I have the next guy?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because first of all, I agree with you on everything you said about Josh. He's a good guy. He plays hard. You know, I think they had to find their way in this defense a little bit, Gus. Hand on the ground, standing up. I think Josh may be happier standing up, but the defense calls for him to have his hand down, so they kind of had to work through it. But listen, Josh Hines-Allen is such a terrific player, and he's a good leader. I think the problem, and I'm leading to my next pick here, I think the problem with the defense, or one of the problems, I don't think the tackles have been very good. I think Devon Hamilton, God bless him, has tried to come back from the illness, but I'm not sure he's ever been himself again. And they really haven't found a guy at that other spot. It started out to be Roy Robertson Harris. He's gone now. They wanted Mason Smith, the rookie, to be in there. He's been in and out of the lineup. There's been some healthy scratches, and he's had the ankle. Jordan Jefferson at time will be, but he's more of a Devon, kind of a 2-gap guy, more of a nose guard. They've tried Big O in there. He's been up and down. They've tried Tyler Lacey. He's okay. But I think the fact that those 2 spots haven't played very well has made it even harder on the edge guys, because you can double them, you can chip them. You got to have some push in the middle for the edge guys to be effective. So I think that's probably, but Josh has been fun to watch. I got to take the other side. I got to take Trayvon. I think Trayvon Walker is emerging. You know, the bad thing for Trayvon, Gus, is he came into the league and was going to immediately be compared to Aiden Hutchinson. Well, Aiden Hutchinson's a great player. He's going to be one of the best pass rushers in the league for the next 10 years. People rave about him. But if you take him out of the conversation, Trayvon Walker's a heck of a player. I think he's going to have a second straight double-digit sack season. He's at 8.5 now. He's got 4 games left. He needs another sack and a half. I really like how hard he plays. I like how physical he is. So if Brian Thomas Jr. and Josh Hines-Allen are off the board, I think Trayvon Walker's the next guy. I love watching him every game.
Absolutely. I've been pleasantly surprised by his development, especially as a pass rusher, because coming out of college as a first overall pick out of Georgia, the deal was always that he was a little bit of a raw player, a raw athlete, a little bit inexperienced, especially because Georgia had such good defensive rosters that it's not like he was being a starter as soon as he was a freshman or anything. And so I thought it was going to take a little bit more time for him to develop some pass rush moves besides just the bull rush and kind of bowling guys over. And he's done a really good job of kind of like having pass rush plans, being able to add different counters to his bull rush, which, as it should be, is his main type of pass rush. And so it's been really cool to see how he's developed as a pass rusher. And from day one as a rookie, he's been outstanding as a run stopper or a run defender. I think that the only reason that the Jags defense isn't like one of the worst of this century period is because they've got those 2 pillars on the edges in Hines-Allen and Walker who are able to just keep everything inside. I made this comment after the Titans game that I felt like all of Tony Pollard's big runs came from right up the middle, which goes in hand with what you're saying, where defensive tackles are a little bit of a weakness for this defense. Hopefully that'll be something that they can clean up going forward so that Hines-Allen and Walker aren't really just a two-man show on that side of the ball. So definitely agree with you that Trayvon is absolutely a player of interest going forward for this next month. I'll stick with the trenches. One guy I want to talk about was Walker Little because he did just sign a contract extension to keep him in Jacksonville through 2027. And so there's a lot of guys that we could name that could be playing for jobs or playing for certain spots on the roster. And so Walker Little is not like that because he's firmly the left tackle of the future and of the current for Jacksonville. But I am still interested to see how he develops over the next couple of years, but also in these next 4 games, because when I had Leon Searcy on, I think it was last week, to talk about Walker Little as well as Anton Harrison, he was saying that the big thing for both of them as young players is just consistency because they've both shown the ability to win in the NFL on the majority of snaps, but really to go from a good player to a great player. I think this applies to any position, but especially offensive line and offensive tackle. You just have to be consistently great and consistently winning your matchups. And so I'll be interested to see with Anton too, but he missed Sunday's game with an illness, but specifically Walker Little, now that Cam Robinson is out of town and Little does have the extension. I'm excited to see how he's able to progress.
Yeah, me too. And look, Leon's forgotten more about offensive tackle play than I'll ever know. But I he said you got to do it play in and play out. Hey, look, this is the time for Walker Little, man. This is it. You've waited the whole time he's been here. He's been a good substitute. He's been a good fill-in. He's played sides. He's done what they've asked. But it's not been his job. Until Cam Robinson was moved out, it wasn't his job. The day that happened, well before the extension, the day that happened, it became his job. Now, I got a hunch they had a pretty good idea where they were going with the extension before they traded Cam Robinson, and they weren't going to sign Cam next year anyway. He was expensive, and Walker's their left tackle of the future. I'll tell you one thing I would keep an eye on as you move forward is I think Walker Little and Anton Harrison are going to be their 2 tackles. I'm not sure which guy plays on which side moving forward. I think for now, for these last 4 games, it'll be Walker Little playing left tackle and Anton Harrison playing right tackle. I wouldn't be surprised, Gus, if they experimented with that in OTAs and mini camp and maybe even in the preseason. I'm not sure that by the time it's over that Anton Harrison isn't more of a left tackle and Walker Little isn't more of a right tackle. It wouldn't surprise me if they flip them. But for now, I think Walker Little's got his chance. Go play left tackle. You have a chance now. Your team's playing some games against teams that aren't as good as the ones you've had to play. So I agree with you. I think Walker Little is going to be fun to watch, and we're all seeing if he's worthy of that money. You think about it. This team really has extended a lot of good young players, man. Trevor's obviously extended. Josh Hines-Allen's extended. Tyson Campbell's extended. Walker Little's extended. And then they've got other young players who are going to be here for a while because of the nature of their contract. So the young foundation is here. If they can get those trenches better, the inside of the interior of the offensive line and the interior of the defensive line are big areas. So, but I'm with you on Walker Little. All right, one more guy. I'm going to go off the grid a little bit. I'm going to go with a non-starter technically, Gus.
Okay.
But I love watching play is Ventrell Miller, man. I love how explosive he is. I love how downhill he is. He's the most downhill linebacker they've got. He looks like he's shot out of a cannon. I think he's going to be a starter here for a long time. I watched him at Florida, and I told these guys, I said, listen, if he can stay healthy, he's a really good player. He's undersized, and he's not been healthy at Florida, so he's got to prove that he's big enough, A, and B, that he can stay on the field. But man, if he can, he's a good player. So for me, if I need one more guy that I'm going to watch closely, man, I love watching Ventrell Miller. I think he's a really good NFL linebacker.
Yeah, I think he has the nickname Missile because of just what you said. He gets shot out of a cannon. You're absolutely right that he does attack the line of scrimmage. Feels like twice as good as any other Jaguars linebacker. So he's definitely a guy that's going to be exciting to watch, not just these next 4 games, but in the next couple of years going forward. And I've never been happier to be wrong about a player because I was skeptical of the pick when the Jags did take him out of Florida. But even though, like you, I was a really big fan of him watching him at Florida and thought he was a great leader for that defense, I was just skeptical about the size and the injury and the age concerns, but he has certainly proven me wrong, which is even more impressive after he had an Achilles injury his rookie year. And so for him to bounce back from injury and bounce back from being kind of a later drafted linebacker and really be able to find himself a role in Ryan Nielsen's defense has been super impressive. And so, yeah, I'm very excited to see Ventrell Miller. I think one of the underrated highlights of the season, honestly, has been his mic'd up, quote unquote, performances and just the pregame speeches that we have seen because of the Jaguars video team. And so, yeah, definitely a great guy on and off the field. Excited to watch him. My last guy is also technically not a starter. I wanted to talk about Tank Bigsby because Travis Etienne started Sunday's game, and he started each game that he's been healthy for this season and last season. But Bigsby, I think, unofficially took if not the starting role, then the lead role in Jacksonville's backfield last week. He had 18 carries and the go-ahead touchdown compared to only 4 carries for Travis Etienne. And I know that Mia and Campo have both said this, where Bigsby's vision and eyes are a little bit better than Etienne. And so that's just one factor as to why he's been producing a little bit better this season, or at least more efficient, and why he's been getting more opportunities. But I still think that's an area that each of them can improve in, is kind of seeing defenders and kind of helping out their offensive line, because obviously we hear all the time about how running backs are able to produce largely because of how the offensive line blocks in front of them, but also like running backs need to help out their offensive line by setting up blocks and not running into the wrong gaps and kind of taking the ball where it needs to go. And so I'm excited to watch really both of them, but especially Bigsby as the younger and kind of emerging running back.
Gus, I'll tell you this. I don't know that I completely agree, and Dave certainly knows football, and Mia, they have great takes. But I don't know that I agree it's a vision thing between he and Etienne, because I still think Tank bounces it outside a few times more than I want him to. I think it's one thing I would change, because I love him like you. I love Tank Bigsby. I think he's their best running back. But if there's one thing I'd like to see him do is get it north and south a little quicker, because every now and then he still tends to bounce things. I don't know that Travis doesn't have great vision. I think he does. He's just not physical. He tries. He's a tough kid, man. And he's super fast. If you get him in space, forget about it. But I don't know that some guys are just more physical. And Tank is a physical downhill runner. He's the Ventrell Miller of offense, right? He bursts and comes right at you. But I'm with you. I like both backs. But I think Tank Bigsby will be their money back. I think that's kind of where you were going with this, and I would agree with it. I think he'll kind of be their money back as they move forward. He's a tough, hard-nosed, physical guy. Don't bounce it outside quite as much as he does. Right, stick it up in there, as they like to say. I'd like to see him do that. Hit it and get north and south. But they're both fun to watch. I agree with you. So, by the way, I was torn between Ventrell and Tank. For what it's worth, I went my third guy. I was torn between those guys, and I'm going overtime here on you. So I'm probably waiting. I'm going over my allotted time. But one guy I almost brought up was Jarry Jones. I think he's a good player. If I'd had a fourth guy, he'd have been my guy, Gus. He's a guy that he's playing slot now. I think he can play outside. I wouldn't be surprised as you move forward if Tyson Campbell and Jarry Jones are your outside corners. He's big. He's also plays with an edge. You talked about how Ventrell's good when he's mic'd up. Well, he's got a little bit of edge to him. I think Jarry Jones has an edge to him on a team that doesn't seem to have a lot of those kind of guys. So I think Jarry Jones he'd be my honorable mention. Can I have an honorable mention on the podcast? Am I allowed that? He'll be my honorable mention because he's a fun guy to watch as well.
I know. I'm totally glad that you brought his name up, because it's a name that really should be mentioned, especially with just the format that we have for today's show of guys who are worth watching. And I think that's definitely, even if most Jaguars fans know the name Jarry Jones because he is a rookie and he did attend Florida State University, I think that even more fans should be able to not only know his name, but really appreciate what he's doing on the football field, because he had his first career sack and maybe the best game of his young career on Sunday. And so totally a player worth monitoring going forward. I'll just let you keep the honorable mention. I don't have one on my own, but it seemed like we had similar short lists. But I'll let you get out of here. Really appreciate you joining the show, Frank, helping me to try to portray somewhat of a positive light on this team, even if it hasn't been the most positive season. But thanks again, Frank. Hopefully we'll have you on sometime, and have a good holidays.
All right. I got same to you. Thanks for having me on. Anytime, buddy. Take care, man.
All righty. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. A little sit down with Frank. Got a couple comments that we'll get to before we get out of here. Robert asked on YouTube, do you think Prince and Cole Jefferson will get more playing time? Referring to a few guys in Jacksonville's 2024 rookie class. DeAndre Prince and Miles Cole, I would say they've played in a handful of games so far, but it's really just been like in Prince's case when Tyson Campbell was out, then he got a few defensive snaps. So really, like they're only playing if there's absences or injuries to guys in front of them, and I think that'll still be the case for the rest of the season. I wouldn't necessarily expect to see a lot of them, but Jordan Jefferson, the nose tackle out of LSU, despite Devon Hamilton still being the starting guy in that role, I think Jefferson has played the most out of those three and will probably play as much as the other two guys combined for the next month. And so, as Frank and I were saying, but especially Frank, interior defensive line is definitely a need for Jacksonville going forward. But with that said, even if they need to add some talent or make some upgrades to that room, there's still a handful of guys, including Miles Cole and Jordan Jefferson, Tyler Lacey, who's a rookie last year. A lot of guys are still going to be on the team and have a chance to have roles going forward. And so I think that position group is important to watch going forward. I would say the same for the safety group, because even if it seems like Andre Cisco is on his way out, he's an impending free agent, and he was benched on Sunday. He didn't show up until the third defensive drive for Jacksonville. Antonio Johnson and Darnell Savage are under contract for a few more years. And so same deal with interior defensive line. Even if they need to add some people and make some upgrades to that position group, there are still players in that position group that'll have roles in the future. So worth monitoring. Jags on Top said on YouTube, hoping Cephas gets a few more chances to play this season. Yeah, I agree. I think that would be pretty cool. Obviously, Parker Washington, even if he had a little bit of a quieter week last week, he's generally had a solid year as a second-year receiver, especially after Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis went down. And Cephas was activated, I believe, for the first time this season. He's an undrafted free agent out of UTSA, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he was activated for the first time on Sunday and didn't really do much, but it would be cool if he did get more opportunities, because he had, I think, one of the more impressive training camps, at least relative to expectation, of any Jaguar, honestly, practice squad or active roster. He had a great training camp and just offseason in general. So it would be cool to see a young guy like him get more opportunities. But yeah, that'll do it for us. Appreciate everyone who commented, everyone who tuned in live, everyone who's catching up in podcast form. Thanks again to Frank for joining. That was the second time he was on. Love having his expertise and perspective. Austin Boston's and Random Vids just asked on YouTube, what's the safety's name with dreads? Has he played any better? I think you're referring to Antonio Johnson, who is, I guess, been a little bit more consistent. He started out as a starting strong safety and then was benched, not fully, kind of like Andre Cisco on Sunday, but he was removed as a starter and then was as more of like a rotational guy than guy playing 100% of snaps. And so he's done a little bit better, but really that whole safety room has been pretty inconsistent. Like Darnell Savage and Andre Cisco have both had really good flashes, but they've also, all three of them really have had really tough moments too. And so, yeah, consistency is key going forward. But that'll do it. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you back here at 9:04 a.m. on Thursday as me and I break down the Jaguars versus Jets matchup on Sunday. So till then, have a good one, y'all.
Has been brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Your path to recovery starts here.